Hi, it's Will from stormthecastle.com, and here on YouTube you know me as Epic Fantasy, and this is my latest tutorial. This is a fun project. I love this kind of stuff. This is how to sculpt a fantasy miniature, or a miniature. See them? And we sculpt a battle mage. You can do a mage, you can do an elf, you can do a human, you can do a warrior, you can do a dwarf, and he is 1 3/4 inch tall. I take you through the whole process from start to finish, how to do something like this, what materials you need and tools and stuff like that. It's really fun. If you make something, if you do follow this tutorial and make one, make sure you send me a picture. I will send you a certificate of completion. Thanks for watching my videos. If you're a subscriber, I very much appreciate that. Thanks for sticking with me. If you're not a subscriber, hit that button. Always lots of fun and interesting and creative projects. Thank you. Dioramas, origami, catapults, and treasure telescopes, terrariums, bonsai trees, and paper games, swords and shields, and real blacksmithing, model rockets, animation. I teach the art of real creation. StormTheCastle.com. Let's make something. Alright, let's take a look at the tools and equipment you need. A pair of pliers, some wire. 22 gauge is really good for this. You can use florist wire. A cork for handling it. Some 2-part epoxy modeling clay. Some tools to sculpt with. Toothpicks, pins, anything you got. Dental picks work good. Paint brushes. And there you go, there's your model. And we're going to, let's take a closer look at that 2-part modeling in clay, that modeling epoxy. I like it, there's a bunch of different types. I like a product called Procreate. I like the way it feels and the way it works. It comes in 2 different things. One is an epoxy. So here's the white, this is the epoxy. And the other half is well, excuse me, the white is a resin, and the dark here is a hardener. So you mix equal amounts together, and then you've got a working life. For this Procreate, you get about 2 hours that it stays soft and workable, and then it hardens. So, and then you can't work it anymore, except, well, you can still sand it and cut it and whatnot. But so you've got, 2 hours to work with that clay. So let's start working on the actual model. Let me show you how to do something like this. Let's take a quick look at the human body. Generally, the human body is broken up into 6 parts, 6 equal parts, 6 heads it's called. So something like this, as you keep this in mind when you're sculpting your model. You have the head, the torso is about 2, and the legs are about 3. So that equals to 6 heads. So that's important if you want to keep your model looking, human-like. If it's elf, you're going to distort that one way. If it's dwarf, you're going to distort it another way. You're going to shorten it. Children, the heads are not 1/6, their heads are actually larger. So these are all things to keep in mind when you're sculpting and you're setting it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 equal parts. So let's start on what figure we're going to do. And I said, I think I want to do some kind of wizard. So you start with drawings. Always before you do your actual sculpting, do some drawings, because there's a lot you got to figure out. Like I said, maybe he's going to have a staff and he's going to hold it up like this. And I was like, nah. I tried it again, and I really wasn't happy with it. And that's all part of the process. You want to get the gesture and the shape of your figure first, so you get something to work with on paper before you do the actual sculpting. And I finally scratched this and said, nah, I'm just not liking him holding the staff up. I says, how about something like this where he's kind of holding it across his body? And I said, this is better. I like this better. So we're going to go with something like this. So once I've got a few drawings of what I think he's going to look like, now I make a drawing, a gesture drawing of the actual size. That's the size I'm going to make the miniature, so I can compare it. That's about 1 3/4 inches. He's about 1 3/4 inches tall. And notice how I still used my 1/6. So there you go. I like it. So let's move forward with this and do some actual work here. First thing we're going to do is make something called an armature with our wire. And that is a wire frame inside the figure. It helps us to sculpt it. It helps us to put the clay on something, and it also helps it to keep strong over time. It's less prone to breaking your miniature. So make a little hoop like this for the head, and then I like to cut 2 pieces of wire, and then make yourself your figure. And an important part here is the gesture. Your character's not flat, not just standing there like he's at attention. Well, maybe he is, in that case, then fine. But you want to have the gesture here about right. See, he has one leg a little bit forward, his arms are a little bit bent, his torso is just a little bit twisted, See, that's very nice, and he's holding that staff. And of course we make a wire armature for that staff too. So there you go. I really like this. The gesture of this miniature armature is really nice. See it? He's leaning slightly forward. His legs are bent a little bit. Take your time with this. This is important. I know you want to get to the clay part, and that's a wonderful part, but this is important. If you set a good foundation here, it makes a difference in how well your miniature comes out. You know, particularly the pose. We're working on the pose here. So I do my little tweaks, move it around a little bit. So we take our Procreate clay, epoxy, and if you want to buy some, I have links on the website as to where you can get some on Amazon. And we're not going to do the whole sculpture in one fell swoop here, because we're going to need more than 2 hours. But we do mix up the bulk of it right now to flesh in most of the body. So we take even amounts of the resin and of the hardener, and we mix them together thoroughly. See, one's black and one's white, and when you mix them, it becomes gray, and that's how you know it's ready to be used. The stuff is pretty wonderful, and you're going to notice as you're working it that it slowly hardens. It doesn't like harden in 2 hours, boom, and it's done. It slowly hardens, and you'll see how it changes in consistency to the tool and to your fingers. It'll be really soft at first, and over time it starts to get harder and harder and harder, and more difficult to work. It's really quite cool. The good thing about this stuff is you can get extra fine detail with it, like super fine detail. And if you wanted to cast miniatures, make copies, this is good for that too. So now we start with major body parts on the internal core. We're going to leave the arms and the staff alone for now. We're not going to put those. So think of your large muscle and body groups. You know, the quadriceps, the upper legs, the lower legs, and the torso, the chest. We're going to flesh in those parts first with balls of clay. You know, and work those onto the armature. For now, you just want to get the basic fullness of the torso and the legs. You don't want to really worry about any detail. You just want to get the major muscle and bone groups. See how it is? There's 4 for the legs, 2 on each leg, and then a big one, a big section for the chest and back. This is all just filling into rough shape for now. And then the head. And I like it. You can see how it's starting to look like a figure. Now we make sure you turn it around and do the back side too. See the major muscle groups like the glutes? And I'll be filling in the back to the spine and the whole back area too. But at this point we're doing the muscle, the large areas, and we're just kind of like bulking them in. And once we get them bulked in, we can start to do the detail work. So this is where you pull out the tools and you start to shape it like you really want it. Start to get those legs right in the back and the front and the chest and the torso and all of that. You use your tools to start to get medium definition. You don't want extreme detail here because we still have to do the arms and the neck and the staff, his staff, but it's starting to look real now. See it? But this is a fun part when you use the tools to start to see it. And at this point you can add small pieces to fill in the small areas. Bulk it out. I added extra for the pecs. I narrowed his waist a little bit. And once you get that pretty close, right, see it? I added the pecs. Now once you get that pretty close, Then you can move out to do the arms, and you do this because once you've got those arms in, there's a certain amount of work you're not going to be able to do on the inside of the torso. So you want to get a lot of that done before you add the arms on. But here we go. Now the shoulders, and I'll actually show you this. Make a little ball of the epoxy, add it on for the shoulder. Then you add the upper arm, which is the bicep and the triceps. And it took me a little effort there to get it over the armature. But you see, I'm going to force that in there and get it to wrap on the armature, because his arms are pretty close to his body. Lower arm. See, in very small pieces, you can get very small pieces on there. And at this point, I'm feeling the clay is starting to get harder to work with. So I actually mixed up another small batch of the resin and the hardener, so I could have more of the very pliable and soft epoxy. Now the other arm, same thing goes, the shoulder down to the bicep and then the forearm. And there you go. Now we'll add some for the staff. And I kind of had fun with this. I tinkered around with some different ideas. And the staff I ended up with is kind of cool. I like it. Instead of being like a strict mage, he's kind of like a battle mage. He's muscular for a magic user, I guess you could say. But we get some epoxy on there just so we can start working it. And you can roll out long strands, spaghetti-like strands of epoxy that works really well. Like this center section here is a rolled out piece, and then I just squeezed it over the wire. And you can see how the wire armature is very important for the staff. You wouldn't be able to do it without one. The clay would just sag. And then now some thin sheets. I spread out some thin sheets, a thin sheet here to do the cape. And you can actually do this if you wanted to add like layers of clothing or armor. You can you can roll out some thin sheets of the epoxy. I attached that cape, added some waves to it to give it motion. Yeah, I like that staff. And the hair. The beautiful thing about adding epoxy like this is you get that wonderful line, like of where the old layer is and the new layer goes. It gives you a nice crisp edge. See it there on the hair, and you can also see it there on the shoulder where the cape is. It's a nice crisp line that's nice. And then the face is last, pretty much last. I added some small bits. You can do this a couple of different ways. You can start the face right away if you wanted to get the nose and the eyebrows, the brows, and the mouth. And then you can add small bits, or you can even add a whole sheet right over his face like this, and then start to work that. But that's pretty much it. I hope you make some miniatures if you're really interested in doing it. I added some jewelry, say around his neck. And we're liking it. I mean, you could go on and do much more detail work, but I'm pretty happy with this. This is a couple hours of work. Nice little miniature. We're going to paint it up. And that's it. Remember, I got lots more actual sculpting miniature tutorials here on my YouTube channel. And I got lots of stuff about sculpting and painting miniatures on my website at stormthecastle.com. Let's take a quick look at painting. Any kind of paint you want. I used 2 different types. I used Testors oil enamels, and I also used some just plain old acrylic paints. I like the Testors enamels better. They're better for detail work, like a silver. And the color scheme is totally up to you. You can have fun with it. That's it. Your miniature is done. Thanks for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're a subscriber, thanks for subscribing to my channel. If you're not a subscriber, hit that button. I always have lots of fun and interesting and very creative projects. I do 2 new ones every week. As an example, here's a couple more videos you might want to watch.